Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to our friends in Greece. We've got a whole wide array of classes from all over the world today, and it's so exciting that you're joining us for another Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants broadcast. If you're joining us for the first time, like quite a few of you are, we are all about bringing conservation, adventure, and science into classrooms around the world. Now, I'm going to skip my usual traditional intro to just set the stage for this in a little bit of a different way. I've hosted over 2,000 broadcasts in the last 10 years. So I've had the chance to interact with some of the coolest scientists and explorers on planet Earth. And I kid you not, the person you're going to hear from today is like in my top 5 favorite people we've ever had on. She sent me her slide deck yesterday, and I was like, I need to send this to my mom. So I sent it to my mom, and my mom's response was, some people are built different. And I'm like, yes, that's exactly a good phrase for Alison. So you guys are in for such a treat today, learning from her and her incredible adventures for science around the globe. Now, before I bring her in to blow your minds, I want to do a housekeeping note. We do have a little Kahoot today. So between our talk and our Q&A, 4 questions, test your understanding, have some fun. If you want to pull up that game pin, extra opportunity for interactivity in the middle. Now, with all that said, I'm going to zip it because you're not here for me. I'm going to turn you over to Alison to blow your minds. Alison, welcome back to the show, and so nice to see you again.
Oh, thank you for having me. I was so excited for this morning.
Well, I know you've got a lot to share, a lot of beautiful things, great stories. So I'm going to dip off, and you can take us away and dive in, and let's do this thing.
Okay, so I'm not looking at you yet. I can just see my presentation. So just holler if you can't hear me or anything.
I will.
Okay?
I'm a master hollerer. That's my job. It's very fun.
Fabulous. Well, thank you so much for giving me some of your time today. I'm really excited to share a little bit about what I do, ice core science, and tell you what this is, why we do it, how we do it. And I'm going to use one project just to tell you this story because it's just a really nice example. And where am I? I'm in Edmonton at University of Alberta, and that's where Canada's National Ice Core Lab is here that I direct. And I also am the founder of Girls on Ice Canada. Now, I said I was going to show you an example just to explain to you that the how and the why and the what of ice core science. And so this example that I'm going to use today with you is from an ice core that me and my team drilled on Mount Logan. And so I just wanted to start by saying that this particular project, it takes place on traditional territory land. So it's on the Kluane, the Champagne-Ajac and White River First Nation area of the St. Elias in the Yukon. And it's a real gift as someone who is not from that part of the Yukon to be able to work on this land. So, as a general background, first of all, why the heck do we do this? It is very uncomfortable. It is very expensive. Why are we going to all these places and drilling ice cores in the first place? Well, ice cores allow us to investigate past climate. And they let us look back at the environment and past climate conditions before we had satellites in the sky, what we call the satellite era. And that started around the 1970s. So before the 1970s, when we have these daily snapshots of what the surface of the Earth looks like, how are we supposed to be able to know what different parts of the environment and the climate looked like? And ice cores are one of our most valuable tools for answering those sorts of questions about the Earth and climate and how humans have impacted both. Now, I guess I'm really a chemist at heart, so it's the chemistry of ice cores. When we melt the ice and look at what's in the water, that offers us an almost endless number of tools for investigating past climate. And I'm listing here on this slide just a few of, my gosh, probably honestly hundreds that we use ice cores for to reconstruct. And these are just some of the most common ones. So I put here temperature. We use the stable isotopes of oxygen 16 and oxygen 18, that ratio to reconstruct temperature in the past from ice. We can reconstruct wildfire frequency and intensity in the past, which helps us understand, what to predict in terms of future wildfire activity. A somewhat newer area of ice core science, I would say, is looking at anthropogenic pollution, meaning how have humans impacted the planet over more recent decades, over more recent periods of time. Things that we use in our daily lives, but they get mixed up into the atmosphere and actually transported all around the globe, even to the remote polar regions. And then I put here marine productivity, which sounds a little bit specific, but this is actually probably, I would say, my little area of expertise in ice core science, looking for things in the chemistry of ice cores, like from glaciers and ice sheets that are on land, that can tell us about the ocean in the past. They can tell us about marine productivity, meaning little tiny phytoplankton and little critters in the sea, how they were living and surviving over time, and how sea ice changed over time, things like this. So in general, ice cores allow us really to understand how all these different parts of the climate system have changed, again, before the satellite era, before we had satellites in the sky and can actually observe these changes, and then ultimately we can answer questions about what caused those changes. So here's this example I'm going to tell you about. So we drilled an ice core on Mount Logan, which is the highest mountain in Canada, and it's right on the Yukon border where that red arrow is pointing. It's kind of where BC and the Yukon and Alaska are all close together. And why did we go here? Gosh, it's awfully high, 5959 meters, or almost 20,000 feet. It's within the largest non-polar ice field in the world. And the reason for going to a place like this is because ice cores contain global climate information, so they can tell us things about the climate of the whole planet, but they also contain very local or regional climate information. And so if we only have ice cores from Antarctica and from the high Arctic, we miss a lot of information from the non-polar regions where most of the human population lives. So they're really, really important, and they kind of help fill those critical gaps in our climate knowledge. Now, our longest ice core records do come from the polar regions, and that's because probably obviously those are the parts of our planet that have stayed the coldest longest and have allowed snow to accumulate over long periods of time without melting. So our longest records do come from Antarctica and Greenland and the high Arctic, not from these high mountain non-polar areas. But again, they have their own power. They allow us to look at different things in the past. Take wildfires as a really good example, where people live, and they allow us to look at those really more local changes to help better predict future change. And then I'll just say one more thing about Logan here. It's I mentioned it's within the largest non-polar ice field in the world. So even though it is outside the polar regions, it's very high, very cold. It feels polar. And it is an enormous mountain. It's actually the largest, it has the largest base circumference, like the base of the mountain, of any non-volcanic mountain on Earth. So it's just this massive, massive peak. Now here's a little flyover of the high area that we call the massif, the upper part of the mountain. And we've long known that Logan in particular, with its huge and high summit plateau that's sticking up into the free troposphere, it might contain the longest record of North Pacific climate variability on Earth. And that is, it might have the ability to tell us something about climate in the North Pacific in this part of the world that, for example, these polar ice cores couldn't. And this summit plateau has all the characteristics we're sort of looking for. It's like a big bowl, and it's not, the ice isn't really flowing, it's sort of sitting there, which is great. We don't want too much flow, or we get a sort of messed up record. It snows a lot, and so when it snows a lot, we get a really detailed or high resolution record. And we also know that it's been frozen for a really, really long time, which again is unusual, except for these really, really high peaks outside of the poles. And so the primary goal of this project, since we had identified it as probably a really good site for holding a climate record, was to drill an ice core in these challenging conditions on the summit plateau. And that's after locating the ideal coring site up on that big plateau. And I'll show you how we do that in 1 second. And I would also say, just sort of more personally, that this was a really interesting project for myself. I maybe like some of you, I've skied since I was 2. I love winter sports. I worked as a a mountain guide and a ranger for years, and I have this whole other side of my life that's really important to me. I just love being out in the mountains and doing winter sports, and this was a project that let me use those skills and sort of do all these things that I'm really passionate about all at once, and that made it really rewarding. Okay, so a few things go into drilling cores, and again, this is a really good example because we did them all here. So we typically go out a whole year before. We do a whole season of this sort of prep work, the site selection, like where are we going to drill, and when we can, we install weather stations as well nearby to where we're going to drill. So in this case, this is my climbing partner, Rebecca, in the yellow, and that's me hunched over with this weather station. This was in May 2021, so a few years ago now. And Rebecca and I, we climbed Logan this year and installed this weather station. It sits at 18,500 feet. It is the highest weather station by a long shot in North America. If you're interested in how uncomfortably cold and windy it is at that spot, it sends data in real time every 5 minutes to a publicly available website. So feel free to look at how terrible the weather is there at any point. I can share the link. But this is a really cool weather station. It's sort of helped raise the roof of human observational networks because we lack direct meteorological observation from mountain environments in places like this for obvious reasons. They're very hard to install and maintain. But so this one's still sitting there, behaving mostly well. The wind sensor goes on and off, but it's mostly been behaving. And then the same year, so in 2021, the year before we drilled, we also did a radar survey. And this is how we get information that can tell us where exactly we want to drill. But here on the top left here, for this sort of recon year, that's the shot of the weather station zoomed out a little bit. There at 18,500 feet. The top right is actually the summit of Mount Logan. We remeasured the summit height for funsies just to see if it had changed because it is a summit that's snow and ice. It has not. Within the error bars that we have for those measurements, it has not changed. And then the bottom two are just pictures of the route. It's a pretty full-on mountaineering route, and it's getting trickier and trickier actually as the lower sections start to melt. I'll show you a bit more. But so for the radar survey, you're kind of looking at that equipment on the top here. I was saying how this helps us to narrow down like where we actually want to drill. And what these radar systems are doing is you see on the top right, you see those two sleds. So behind me in that one, the sled that's right behind me is a transmitter sled. It's sending out little pings of energy, and then the sled in the back is a receiver unit, and it's receiving the energy that front sled unit is putting out. And so what you end up with is, I should have shared this with you, but it's called a radargram, and all it looks like is a bunch of lines, and it's showing you the layering of the ice from your skis or the sled all the way down to the bedrock, where the ice is sitting on the bedrock below. In this case, over 300 meters, like over 1,000 feet. So it's deep. But that signal of energy bounces off every internal layer. And so you get these lines and you can see, there's some folding here. We want to avoid that. You don't want any disturbances, because if there's disturbances in the ice, we can't date it. We can't put the depth onto an age scale. If we can't do that, we can't actually do very much of anything with that ice core. And we're looking for specifically as well at the bed where the ice is sitting on the bedrock. We want to make sure there's nothing funky going on, because you can get weird flow, you can get melting, you can get all sorts of things. And that's where the oldest ice is sitting, all the way at the bottom. So we want to look at, where is there nice layering all the way to the bed, and that helps us to pick our site. And here's a picture again. There's a bunch of ways of pulling this thing around. The two units are next to us right there for this particular section on the summit plateau. So again, we did like basically a whole year prior. We did this radar survey, and then in 2022, when this picture actually is from, I took a larger team. We were 7 people total, up the mountaineering route back to the summit plateau for the drilling. And we started by doing a final, just one day, little radar survey just to really narrow down where we wanted to drill. Okay, and then what else did we do that year? We replaced the wind vane. I told you that it's a little bit finicky. It remains finicky. But yeah, after we identified the final coring location from this radar survey, where there's sort of no deformation in those layers, we picked our spot, and then a helicopter started to sling load in. That means it's sort of dropping equipment without landing gently. The drill equipment for us to start drilling. Now, I thought I'd mention too, just because sometimes when I talk about it, it sounds la-di-da, but it is quite the route to get up to here where the weather station is, and then up and over to where the summit plateau is. And I would say it takes you to easily, and by the numbers, one of the most inhospitable places on the planet, which is where this weather station is sitting, Prospector's Call. And this is a spot that I think the average temperature since the weather station's been there has been in the -40s. It typically has very, very high winds. And it's also the spot that gives Logan its sort of unique and committing nature, which is that you have to go up to get down. So that spot where I'm standing on this ridge, to the left there is the route I came up, and you're looking at King Peak below. To the right, you drop down to the summit plateau and then back up to the summit, which is to say that when you're on the summit plateau, and if you have any medical issues, altitude issues, anything's going on, you actually have to go back up to that point I'm standing to get down. And that can be extremely difficult. And this is something that I think probably keeps some people away from the mountain, because you're quite committed once you go down to the summit plateau side. And then one more piece, here's Rebecca and I on King Call Icefall. And this is one of what's become a trickier section of the standard mountaineering route. You can see it's a huge, huge icefall. It takes about 8 hours to ascend it on skis. And it used to be straightforward. The first time I climbed Logan, which was many years ago, I think I'm older than I look, it was pretty straightforward, ski straight up. And then this last time, it was not, because of melting and thinning of these lower ice falls on the mountain. So it's kind of become a very mobile maze of seracs and holes that you have to navigate. And again, this is actually because of melting that's happening on the lower portion of the mountain. Now, when we do ice coring expeditions like this, what does it look like? Well, it's pretty minimal. Here's our drill camp on the summit plateau. And here it is from the air. So what you're looking at is the bottom 3 sort of bigger dome tents. They're floorless, right? So they're just domes sitting on the snow. One of them we drill in. Another one is for cooking. It's a kitchen tent. And then the other one is storing gear. You can't really leave any of our extra cold weather gear, anything on the surface, because of the high winds. It gets blown away or buried very quickly. So that's what those 3 tents are. And then you see there's 4 up at the top. Those are just for sleeping. None of these are heated. And then everybody always asks me this, so I'll point out in the middle of those 2 sets of tents, there's one red one in the middle, and that's our bathroom. It is also a floorless tent with a bucket in it. So now no one has to ask me what we do. We very uncomfortably use a bucket in a floorless ice fishing tent. Okay, so here's inside the drill tent on the summit plateau. This is a very cool drill. It was built in Whitehorse in the Yukon. It says Eclipse Ice Drill on it. It's called an Eclipse drill. And it's a tipping tower drill. I think you'll see in a minute in a short video clip. The entire drill swings from a vertical position, the one it's in now when it's drilling, to an ice retrieving horizontal position. It's really cool. And we drill 1 meter at a time. So every time you send the drill down the borehole, it's drilling its meter, and then it comes all the way back up. And you pull that meter out, do it again, over and over. In this case, 327 times. And then, so how did we do this at altitude where no one's feeling very well, and you're fighting with the altitude. Well, we split into two teams, and this is something we often do on drilling campaigns. And this is to keep the drill running for more hours a day than you normally would. Normally, we'd work like 8-hour days, right? If we worked 8-hour days, we would have been stuck up there for too long. So we split into two very small teams to keep the drill running for 14 hours a day. And because of the altitude, instead of working, some people work half the day, the other people work the other half, we actually alternated our shifts every 2 to 3 hours because it's sort of too exhausting when you're working that high. And this kind of lets us rest between drill shifts and kind of not deteriorate as much as we might have otherwise. And so as we were drilling, and this is typical of these sort of high mountain projects, we keep the ice packaged in these ice core boxes on the surface. And those are those cardboard boxes you see on the right, kind of under that. It's a one of the helicopter sling load nets. And so we package them. In this case, I think we put 9 meters in a box. And every time we had enough boxes, it's only a few, that constitute a full helicopter load, which was about 300 pounds. That's not very much because of the altitude. Every time there was a full load of ice and there was a good weather window, a helicopter would come in, it would hover over us. We'd clip the net with the ice in it to it, and it would take it off to a freezer that we had stationed at the airplane runway. And this is what we did to not have, over 1,000 feet of ice at the end of drilling up there, because in reality, that might have actually had us stuck another couple of weeks trying to fly it all off. So we were trying to fly it off as we went. And here is the very boring drill in action. It does get a little bit monotonous, but the cool thing, even though I'm sitting there sighing, is that as you drill down, you're going farther back in time. Like, it's a literal time machine. It's so cool. And we don't know while we're drilling exactly what year we're in, but we do actually get some sort of estimate. There's a couple things that we do in the field where we can have some idea of where we are. And one cool thing I'll mention is that we sometimes can actually visibly see volcanic ash. We can see volcanic eruptions in the record. We can also see dust storms of the past. And it's very exciting when you can actually see, there's a dark layer, there's something in it. Because usually it's just a lot of nothing. So as you can imagine, really for this particular project and the high mountain ones, it's the altitude that's the major thing to overcome. In this case, the drilling took 2 weeks staying up there. We drilled to a depth of 327 meters, over 1,000 feet. And we flew the final ice off the summit plateau on the day that we stopped drilling, which is amazing. That means we didn't have a backlog. And then we broke the drill down and packed up that whole high camp in about half a day. And I should have said originally it took 9 days to climb the mountain. So 9 days to climb, 2 weeks to drill. And then how long did it take us to get off? Someone always asks me this too, so I thought I'd tell you. 7 hours. It took 7 hours. It's a really spectacular ski. That was us skiing down from basically where the weather station is after we got up and over that high call, down to the base camp, which is way, way out of this picture, down that valley to the right. And just kind of as a final point, and I'm happy to answer questions about anything at all, but why does this matter? Like, you see these images and it looks so pristine and it looks very cold, which it is, but why would we focus on these high mountain regions outside of what I've already shared about, this more local climate information? Well, in addition to that, even though places like this summit plateau are, they look really untouched by anything, including warming, even the highest points on our planet are impacted by climate change. And not only this, but many of the high mountain regions of the world are actually warming at a faster rate than lower elevations. And this is a process called elevation-dependent warming, again, by which these higher elevations on our planet are actually warming at a faster rate than lower elevations. And this sort of highlights the importance of climate records that come from these high mountain regions, despite the fact that they cover shorter periods of time than our polar climate records. It also means that these are places that are susceptible to melt. And so what melt does to, as an ice core scientist, it destroys the record we're going after. So places like this are actually becoming sort of more of a priority to drill, I would say, over some polar climate records because of that sort of threat of melting. I will leave it at that. I am one person of a huge team, and it takes a lot of people to pull off work like this, and it takes big funding agencies and all sorts of stuff. So I am but one person in a huge team, and I'll leave this at that for now. Can I
Oh yeah, you can come out of this and have a bit of a conversation. Yeah. Thank you so much, Alison. Again, like, what a cool office you have. Like, to get to go to some of the most like the coolest, literally and figuratively, places on planet Earth to take ice cores to understand the climate is like, it's insanely topical, but it's also fascinating. Like, it's just anyway. Professional detachment out the window. We're going to dive in with our Kahoot first. So we're going to do 4 questions on Alison, some of which we covered, some of which are kind of novel. We're just going to test some understanding and have some fun. And then we're going to come to all our classes live and on YouTube for a night long Q&A. So for those new to Kahoot, the faster you answer, the more points you get. And what you win is Alison and I's everlasting respect. And if you don't have Kahoot or don't have the ability to bring it up, you can also just yell out the answers in your classrooms, in which case Terrific Hyena is going to sweep this thing like nobody's business. But we're going to dive in, and then we're going to go to our Mary's class first, joining us with their amazing Parisian backdrop. You guys are going to have our first question, La Vie, and then Avoca West. What is the main reason we collect ice cores? 4 options. And Alison, if you want to give us hints, please do. To see how far down the water is, to understand past climates, to test out drill bits, or to sell to drink manufacturers. I mean, you probably could make a ton of money with, like, this ice core came from Mount Logan. Someone somewhere would fund your research for years for that. But hopefully that's not our answer. Yes, to understand past climates. Way to go, guys. Well, there's 3 now. Terrific Hyena has lead. By the way, you talked about Mount Logan weather, and I pulled this up, and it is minus 48 with the wind chill right now, Celsius, which is horrible.
I just shared it.
Yeah, that's like when you throw boiling water in the air and it turns to snow before it hits the ground. All right. Long ice cores can allow us to look how far back into the past. 10 years, 100 years, 1,000 years, or over 1,000,000 years. What do we think? Yeah, I find this incredible. Like, we've talked to ice core scientists that go down to Antarctica as well. So, like, it's so long. Like, the fact that you can literally see what eras looked like when, like, before mankind, like before our species, is unbelievable and must be so exciting and rewarding. All right. I love that you guys are having some fun in the chat too. All right. Alison works in the far north. Does she run into penguins up there? Maybe not on the mountain for sure, but long story short, are there penguins in the North Pole or in the Arctic or not? What do we think? Oh, you guys nailed this one. Okay. Penguins are in the south, polar bears are in the north. That's how you know. Arctic means bear, Antarctic, no bear. I love this question, and that's the first time a whole audience has ever got it right in our history. Way to go. All right, last but not least, and then we're heading to Mary's class for our first question. Alison climbs mountains for fun. Where has she been around the world? So we talked about Mount Logan today. Very patriotic as a Canadian. Is it the Andes, the Himalayas, Alaskan peaks, or all of the above and more? She just can't stop. It's all the mountains. What do we think? Yeah, so again, you guys are killers. This is like the most sweep of a Q&A I think we've ever had. Yes, you've been pretty much everywhere. We'll probably come to some mountains you haven't been to in the Q&A in a minute. But way to go, everybody. All right, Jubilant Raven a second. First, and it looks like you're all in the class. Terrific Hyena. If you are Terrific Hyena, let us know who you are after. Way to go, everybody. All right, Q&A time for 15 minutes. Mary's class, come on in. You're our first one. Thank you so much for being here. And take us away, guys. Hello. Yeah, come chat with us.
Hello. Thanks. That was amazing. We learned so many things. Okay. We have some questions.
Perfect.
Great. I can't wait.
How many people are in your team?
Ooh, in your team. How many people?
Nice. Okay, on this particular team, we started as 7, including myself. 3 people were medevaced for altitude issues, which sounds very dramatic, but that's actually what we planned for. Usually about 50% of people have altitude issues. So we started as 7. We did the drilling, most of the drilling, as a team of 4, which is a very small team.
Yeah. I've never, just as by sense, there are kids who might not know. So when you go higher and higher up, there's less oxygen.
Yes.
So like the only mountain I've ever climbed is Mount Kilimanjaro in East Africa. And when we got to base camp at about 15,000 feet, one of our 10 had to go down because there wasn't enough oxygen. You can measure that with a little device in your finger. And people on mountains, people who really know mountains like Alison, are very serious about making sure that people aren't going to be in danger from lack of oxygen on a mountain. So that's a really cool question and a really cool answer. Thank you.
Yes, that's a great question.
Illinois, we're heading to you guys. Welcome in, lunch crew.
Okay, let's see. I've got 2 of them lined up here.
Sweet.
So do you need like oxygen tubes to breathe?
Yeah.
That's a great question. I know, and I didn't talk about this at all. No. Some people do use oxygen for altitudes like this. I've never used, it's called supplemental oxygen, where you bring a tank and you have to breathe through a mask. I've never done that myself. And we have different ways of helping our bodies acclimatize, so get used to those higher altitudes with less and less oxygen. We have ways of sort of helping our bodies. One of us is simply going very slowly when we go up, and also by doing the route twice. Those are both things that we do. But no, I myself and the teams that I take we don't use oxygen.
As my mother said, some people are built different. I want to say, for our class's sake, so when I was, again, on Kilimanjaro, walking 30 feet at 15,000 feet is oh, you're you look at it and you're like, am I going to make it? Could I just stay here? Maybe I don't have to go to the bathroom after all. I can hold it because it's so challenging. So I love this question. Thanks, guys. All right. Da Vinci Academy, welcome back. Come on in. Hey.
Hi, how are you doing today?
Hi.
So great.
Okay, so I have a few questions. My first question is, what can you learn studying microbes stuck in the ice?
Ooh.
Microbes. Okay. We should bring a different ice core scientist in for this. People love to ask me about living things, and I'm like, I only study the dead frozen stuff. Some people spend their whole careers just looking at microbes and viruses. So these are dead viruses, right? They're not active. Little bit of a myth. Microbes and viruses in ice to tell us about what these tiny little critters, bacteria, different things were like, what their structure looked like in the past and how they have evolved. That's one big question that I know some folks look at. But kind of like all the other things I was telling you about the chemistry in the past, it's sort of the same with the microbes. The folks who spend their time looking at microbes in the past, it's to look at how they changed over time compared to what those kind of classes of microbes look like now, and then how might they evolve in the future. This is my understanding of it as someone who doesn't do that specific part.
Yep, that's perfect. I'm really racking my brain. We actually did a program with someone in Antarctica who took microbe cores. This was 4 or 5 years ago. I'm going to try and find the name for me. Email me this after because it's a really cool area of research. A little different than yours, but I appreciate the answer. YouTube, we're heading to you guys, and we're going to do a whole other round with everyone because we're whipping through these. So YouTube, Sophia, welcome in Deep River. So long since we've had a Deep River class. When was the last time that you went to the Summit Plateau?
The last time, and I don't think it will be my last time. I think I have to go back to service the weather station, was 2022 when I drilled it. And so I have not revisited since the drilling. I have not revisited the weather station either, but it is behaving very well. I put in the chat the link directly to the weather station data that's live if you want to check it out. But I have not been back since 2022. I have drilled. I've been busy drilling in other places.
As you know, if you ever need like a shoe shine boy or someone to get you coffee up on the plateau, you call me, okay? And I'll be there with bells on so fast.
You'll regret that.
Yeah, I doubt it. And I mean, if I can be medevaced out, then there you go. All right, let's head back to Mary's class. Come on in for a second question, guys. Hey. Ooh. Hey, man.
How do you not get sick there?
Yep.
Another really good question. To be totally honest with you, I don't get altitude sick. I'm just one of those lucky people, I think, who I'm able to go really high and not, I can still live and do a job, but that doesn't mean that you're not sick. Staying up at that kind of altitude for that long, the truth is nobody feels good. So even if I'm doing the best of everyone on the team, it's really, really hard to eat. It's almost impossible to sleep. And so over enough days and over 2 weeks, you don't feel good. There's sort of no way around that, partly because I don't use the oxygen like somebody else asked. But yeah, in terms of actually me not getting so sick that I have to get flown off like other folks, I think people used to think that training and other sort of altitude training and stuff might help. And it seems like the science actually says you sort of have a predisposition, like you're kind of born with that ability or not to withstand the low oxygen levels. And I think I'm lucky in some ways.
Well, and I'm so glad you mentioned this because there's so many other elements of like adventure fitness where training will really help you. And of course, it can't hurt. I will take that question live, Alison. Don't worry. And we're going to take some ones after too. But like, there are people when I did my mountain that were like big, unhealthy, otherwise people that could
totally
climb the mountain. And there's people that are the most fit people in the world that they get above like 14,000 feet and their body's just like, nope. And they have to go down because it's a danger to them. So I'm really glad we mentioned altitude sickness.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned too. I see it in the chat as well. And I think like this is a whole science in itself. And I've allowed myself to be the subject in a bunch of these hypoxia studies. So like, yeah, I'm a participant in a lot of these where they do MRIs of my brain before and after, and they do all sorts of testing to see like, is there something about people who just naturally acclimatize well? Like, can it be determined why, basically? Because like Jesse's saying, sometimes sure, fitness should have some impact, but there's something else going on at the base of it.
It's a very, very cool question. Not one we cover much in our program. So thank you guys so much
Yeah,
for working on
sure.
it. Illinois, we're going to head to you. We'll do one from YouTube and then we'll wrap up with Da Vinci. 3 more questions because time flies and you're having fun. But please do email me extra questions. Alison rocks. We'll try and get you as many extra answers as possible because I know we could go all day with this. So love your enthusiasm.
Yeah, send it.
Hello.
Have you ever found any new bacteria species in ice cylinder? And if you have did you get to name it?
Ooh.
Oh, you're a budding biologist, and I have a disappointing answer, which is no.
You got to go back.
No, I don't want to go back. No, I haven't.
One day.
Gosh, one day maybe I'll find either a new bacteria or an actual thing, and I can selfishly name it after myself. But no, I haven't.
You'd be the first. So I was going to say that for our audience. So like when we do look for new bacteria, when we look for new things in rainforests, deep sea, we regularly do find new species. And the tradition is like pretty much everyone, you name it for someone else or something else, something you admire, someone you admire. No one I've ever met has named something after themselves, but that's why you've got to be as cool as Alison. And then when someone does find something, you could be like, oh yeah, this bacteria is named after her. So that's your option for the future. But I love that question. Thanks, guys. All right, YouTube, Deep River. Have you ever seen a polar bear when you're hiking Mount Logan or otherwise? Do you run into our apex predator of the north?
I have seen polar bears, not at Mount Logan. That would be super lost and probably unhealthy. But yes, I work on the islands in the Canadian Arctic, and I also work in Greenland. And there are polar bears everywhere.
Everywhere. There's like one behind you right now, probably. I want to stress for our audience, if you ever want to see polar bears, like a lot of people instinctually think, East Africa, big animals. Canada's north has increasingly become a place that a lot of people go to see incredible wildlife.
Totally.
Like Churchill, Manitoba, which is like a train ride away. It's the polar bear capital of the world. I've seen polar bears in Churchill. Like you can just go there as a tourist and see this incredible animal. So can't recommend it enough.
I'm so glad you mentioned that. That's Churchill's where I've seen the most, despite working across the Canadian Arctic.
Yeah. Have you seen belugas there? You can also see like the white whale like everywhere. It's just a magical place of the world. You're like fly into Churchill Airport and you can see them from the plane. You're like, oh,
you can see them.
There they are. Super neat. All right, folks, again, please do share extra questions. We love your enthusiasm. We are close to the end, so we're going to head to Da Vinci Academy for one more question before we bring in everyone for a big thank you and farewell. Come on in again and take us away.
Hi. So I was wondering if, you can learn anything about the ocean based on things that you find in the ice core.
Ooh. Dun, dun, dun.
Very smart question. Okay. This is a really silly word, this word proxy. But yes, like this is actually my favorite part. What I specialize in ice cores is developing proxies. All a proxy is something we measure really to tell us about something else that seems unrelated. And so these ice cores from Mount Logan or from the big ice sheets in Antarctica or from the Greenland ice sheet, like they're actually far from the ocean, right? We drill at these high, most central parts of these ice sheets and ice caps. But they contain this proxy information about the ocean. And that's because things that come from the ocean, we call them marine aerosols, but all this is salt, like table salt, sodium and chloride that you put on your food. Well, that stuff comes from the ocean. And those salts and various other aerosols, these things that are in the ocean, they, because of waves and wave action, they get those aerosols actually get kind of put up into the atmosphere. They get transported into the atmosphere, and then they float around. They can float around for days, 3 to 7 days, and then they precipitate in snow, like in the middle of these ice sheets. And so when we're melting that ice, and we look at those salts, they're actually telling us something about the ocean conditions in the past. So that's exactly this area that I'm really interested in, because it can tell us what sea ice looked like in the past. It can tell us what phytoplankton, those little tiny little critters in the sea at the bottom of the food chain, like how happy were they in the past, and like how much of the ocean was exposed to sunlight. All these things are contained in those marine aerosol records from the land-based ice. So perhaps you will work on ocean proxy development. That was a very smart question.
I'm ceaselessly amazed when I read books on climate, when I read books on the environment, like how much information we can get from ice cores. Like it's such a cool tool for understanding our planet. And I love that we covered so much today. You guys are an amazing audience as always. Alison, you're amazing. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us. And as you well know, what we do to wrap up every broadcast is I'm going to bring in all our classes to say a big thank you and farewell. And then please do stick around for me after we're done. But our Illinois crew, Da Vinci Academy, Mary's class, thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.